Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by NSTA, the National Science Teaching Association. Find out more about what NSTA has to offer at nsta.org. You're listening to Lab Out Loud, Science for the Classroom and beyond. And today's guest passes out plants to her students.
Like, one of the things that I will now do from here on out is I will actually have kids have plants at school and plants at home. That's on my list now to do from here on out. They will get a plant that they get to keep at school at the beginning of the year that they'll plant, and then they'll have plants they can have at home that they can also take care of at home.
That's up next on Lab Out Loud, but first I'm your co-host Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartel. Well, we're almost a year into the pandemic, Dale, and it's quite interesting because I have actually a picture of this. There's an NSTA reports that I have from last year, and I think it's February of 2020. And on the bottom, somewhere is scribbled, "Corona is coming." And this was February of 2020. And
who wrote it? You wrote it?
I don't know. I don't know if someone else did or not. I can't remember if I did or not. But it seems very, foretelling of where, now that we're almost a year into it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this has been... I think this is weird, but I honestly do think I'm a better person through the pandemic.
Absolutely.
It has made me...
I'm not saying you're a better person, but I think, yes, I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's made me stretch in areas that I would have, put off.
Yeah. It's when we started talking about the pandemic on the show back in, March and April, and, we were talking a lot about how responding to it in an emergency is different than thinking about it long term. And so, throughout the last season, even, we started to think a little bit more about what are people doing to adapt to this new world and trying new things even.
Yeah, and we've had the conversation several times with oh, that's interesting. Like, my kids are doing your kids are doing hybrid too, so they only go to in person twice, 2 days a week, and then the rest of the time is virtual. And there's a part of me as I talk to my kids, you're a junior in high school. This might make sense to keep doing some form of that. And so I think there's a lot of little things that the pandemic forced us to try, sort of like trying new foods. And some of these things we're gonna keep on doing.
So we'd like to start to look at some of that, and to kick off discussing about how we've been adapting to the pandemic, especially in terms of teaching science. Our first guest in this little series is doing something phenomenal, in my opinion, and we wanted to share a little bit of what she's doing, and more importantly, what kinds of things might she want to stay doing once, I guess, we're all done.
So our guest today is a science teacher. Her name is India Carlson. She is a science teacher at Ballard High School in Seattle, Washington. And she's here to tell us more about a new project that she started at the beginning of this school year.
So at school, I have a greenhouse and I have a garden outside. And in a regular school year, we spend a significant portion of our class time working both in the greenhouse and in the school garden and doing things. I mean, we run experiments in the greenhouse, we run experiments in the garden. I've been part of all kinds of pollination projects and climate change projects and phenology projects. And so I realized that we weren't going to be able to use the greenhouse and use the garden at school. So I really started thinking before school started, well, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I know one thing I can do for sure. I can clone a plant for every single one of my students, and I can send a plant home with every single one of my students. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because I always have students do independent projects. And while I could have students set up their own independent projects if they had access to seeds and soil and so on at home, I could also give them the option of you can come and get as many plants as you need, and you can run an experiment at home with whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Wait, clone a plant?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? I think I know.
Oh, so taking a cutting, right?
Oh, okay.
And then just growing a new one.
Oh, so are all the plants that the kids have essentially the same then?
They are mostly they're the same. So I have I have 3 varieties of plants that are all the same kind of plant, but they're 3 different hybrids of that plant. So if you have a green coleus, then every single person who has that plant has a clone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then also it makes it easier if students wanted to use their plant that they took home as an experimental plant for their first project they did during the semester. That made it a lot easier for them because then they did have cloned plants.
How big is this plant when they take it home?
So I started them, and then they first got to pick them up, and they were anywhere between like 3 inches and 5 inches.
Oh, okay.
So they're pretty small.
So you did it through kind of like maybe what we were doing, just drive through, pick up your plant?
Yeah. So our librarian has set up every 2 weeks. We have pickups for kids to get. We actually have a bunch of things like families can come and get cards to if they need them for groceries, right? For financial support, and, they can pick up library books, they can pick up games. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to set it up this way for plants. And after a couple weeks of doing this for my students, right? I'm like all my plant kids getting plants. Then I realized, I asked her one day, I said, would you like it if I did plants that I could just hand out to any of our students? My librarian about lost her mind. She's like, oh my God.
Do I have to barcode these plants?
Well, she was really excited. She's like, that, you can do that? I said, well, cloning plants is easy. Like I can do that. So now it's turned into not only do my students come and pick up plants, and, of course, they kill their plants sometimes, so they come and pick up a replacement plant, or they come pick up a new plant, because I often will say, hey, I have new plants this week if you want to come get a new plant. Yesterday, I made terraria last week, and I filmed myself, and I have a YouTube channel that I use with students, and so I made some terraria, and then I showed my students in class, I made these things, here's the videos how I did it. I'm like, do you guys want to come to school and come pick up things to be able to make one? So that's what I did yesterday. I had terraria, I had jars and plants and soil and whatever. So I had a bunch of my kids show up yesterday, and I had actually intended that they were going to come pick up materials and then take it and build it at home. But no, they wanted to build it right there with me, which was actually kind of funny. So I'll know what to do better next time for that. But and they were very excited about that. I had some guys stop by after baseball practice. They were like, yeah, we totally want to build one. And I was like, okay, let's do that right now. So now I have students who are not my students who are taking plants and taking care of them. And then I have students who are my students I have this year who are taking care of plants. And the other thing that I also sent home seeds and soil for my horticulture class. And those kids have a plant buddy. So they're assigned to one person that then they have a separate link meeting, an online meeting that they meet once a week, and they show their plants to each other, and they talk about what's going well and what's not going well. And I can drop into those meetings, and then they actually have an Excel file they have to go and fill out about what's happening with their plants. And, some of them have had to restart them. And that was also kind of one of my ways of I didn't want kids to just be, having a plant, observing it, and learning the biology behind the plants and understanding that piece of it. But I also wanted them to have a chance to connect with each other.
Sure. We've been virtual since March 17th, 2020. Is that about the same for you too?
Yeah.
We just went back to a hybrid now for some of our grades. But you're all virtual, is that it?
We're all virtual. They're going to go to in-person, I think, for K through second grade. They're talking March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel, first of all, I feel like
boat.
you need to have I guess a cute little name like Pages and Plants or Living Library or something like that. But it strikes me as it's wonderful, first of all, that you have expanded this beyond just the students in your class, because I think that there can be some real opportunities for growth, no pun intended there. But
nice.
Yeah, well, you fit that in there.
I think you've planted a seed. Yes.
There we go.
Well, I mean, most of my students are juniors and seniors, and so Students usually get recruited to my class because they're like, oh yeah, my friend took the botany class, the horticulture class. You should definitely take that class. And I'm like, since we're not in person, I'm going, man, I got to make sure I got to make sure my plant pipeline kids are coming through, because frankly, I don't want to go back to teaching 3 different preps every single day. I really don't. I really like teaching plant class. So
you have some like ideas of pollination in the wind, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes. 100%.
All right. So, okay. You have the setup here. You have kids taking plants home. One of the things that struck me really with this project is that it kind of felt like an art class in a sense, because I think about the way that we do school a lot of times, and students might make a project, but those often get like tucked away in a folder, or now digitally they live somewhere else. But a lot of times art projects, like maybe it was an ashtray when we were growing up, but a mug or something like that is something that they can keep and they can look back to. And I know that, like you said, you mentioned there are some students who kill their plants, but this could really be something that lives with them literally for a long time.
Yes. And the other reason, like, I decided to hand them out to not just my students, was one of our themes this year for school was, how are you going to keep joy in your life? And, part of that was like, how is your space set up at home where you're working on school? And what is like more sort of happy than having a plant on your desk? Sure.
It's interesting because, I had, when I first started teaching, I was given a geranium by the parent-teacher organization, and I still have that. It's not really? It's not. Oh yeah, it's not in my office because, as Dale and our offices have been traveling around, and they haven't always been with an outside window. But I still have it from.
I didn't know you could keep a geranium alive that long.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I am bad at plants. I wish someone would come and just bring. I need an indoor gardener.
Well, usually my reaction when people say that they're bad with plants, it's because they overlove them when they have them. They water them too much.
I don't think that's, maybe.
Maybe. So, I mean, one of the...
I psych myself out with plants. Even my outdoor landscaping. I think I just make it harder than
we have benefited from your wife's plants, though, Dale. So we have quite a few of your wife's hostas that have been or have been split, and their genetic line flourishes in our backyard.
I just learned that hostas are edible.
Oh yeah.
What?
Oh yeah. I haven't eaten them myself, but I have seen many a critter in my backyard munch on them.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
I mean, for people, like, I know they're edible for animals, but like, I didn't realize that it was like you could harvest it in the spring before it fully opens. And apparently it's supposed to be delicious. So I'm going to do it this year.
Really?
I'm going to do it this year.
What's interesting is that there are certain of the hostas that I have that are hit hardest. It's like they must be the tastiest ones. So the groundhog goes after some that, like, this variety is always the one that's decimated the most. They leave some of the other ones. It's fascinating. So maybe I'll have to try that out.
Do your students, back to their plants, do they get like emotionally attached to the plants when they lose them, or do they name the plants?
Yes.
Any stories like that?
Yes. Somebody came yesterday who picked up another plant, and they were like, "Yeah, R.I.P. Fred." And so. Yeah, and even, I mean, at school, when I'm teaching at school, students get very attached to their plants. And I think part of that is, as a high school kid, you don't have control over a lot of things in your life, really.
Uh-huh.
And
true.
And if you're taking care of a plant and it's alive, and if you grew it from seed, even better, right? You are, it's like you're a parent.
Huh. Did you send plants home at all prior to like this? I mean, I know this came out of the pandemic, but did you send plants home prior to that?
I've never sent plants home at the beginning of the year. like students grow plants in the greenhouse that are their plants. So, they come to school and they see their plants every day. And then at the end of the year, we always have a plant sale, and I always let students like pick. Okay, so you can pick your most special plant, and then any other plants after that, right? They get donated. You can buy the rest of your plants, make a donation to school. I said, but that's how we raise funds for the next year to be able to buy seeds and soil and all the things that we need to be able to do. Okay. And it's also part of like, since I teach career and tech ed, it's also part of like the leadership aspect for the career and tech ed part of my class with students, like planning and promoting and organizing and then executing a plant sale. So that's part of it. And then kids are always like, but I want all my plants. So coming out of when like one of the things that I will now do from here on out is I will actually have kids have plants at school and plants at home. Like that's on my list now to do from here on out. They will get a plant that they get to keep at school at the beginning of the year that they'll plant, and then they'll have plants they can
I see.
take care of. Yeah. So like I'm going to make sure that kids have something that they can have at home that they can also take care of at home.
Is it, I mean, I know you said you can clone the plants, like, but is it expensive? I mean, is there? No,
I mean, you got to have soil, and I use like plastic drink cups as like I put a little, you cut the plant off the plant, you put a little cup over the top of it, you water it, and then you let it sit until it starts to make roots. And really the only expensive part of it is getting soil.
Yeah.
Okay.
What kinds of things have you learned from this? And, I'm thinking about, you mentioned that you sound like you enjoy this. You don't necessarily want to go back to teaching the 3 preps that you had. So besides keeping some of the traditions of like, I'm going to have them do it at home as well. What other things have you learned that you might think, hey, I can incorporate this into whatever regular teaching is going to look like in the future?
I'm thinking plant distribution logistic tips. Since you've been through this, so you've decided to share plants with your students.
Well, I certainly have. At the beginning of this, one of the issues that I had was I had students who I had to query them first, like, do you have pets in your house? And are you worried about your pet eating your plant? Because I had to make sure that I was going to send something home that if an animal ate it, it wasn't a problem.
Or do you have a pet that you'd like to see? No.
Right.
Aww.
And so I have learned a lot about like how to query those questions and how to organize that piece of it. So that's for sure. The other thing I've been working with the horticulture teachers in the district. And so we actually really wanted to put together a kit that was a hydroponics kit for the fall, and it took so long for us to get all of our supplies in that it's going to go out second semester. But it is going to go out. I'm in the process of barcoding 200 grow lights. So, but I think, moving forward, like I will also set it up for students to be able to do more experimentation at home. I mean, I've learned from students' independent projects that they enjoy being able to do something at home, and it makes them like open up their eyes when they walk outside.
Can you tell us more about that?
One of the things that I have been trying to get students to sort of really consider is that science is part of our daily life all the time. We're doing it all the time. And really thinking about science can be a hobby, doesn't have to be your career. And if you're just curious about things, and very few, especially since I'm in an urban environment, right? I have a lot of students who have not ever bothered to actually look at plants in any kind of detail, ever. I mean, most people don't, right? It's green. Can I eat it, or is it pretty and has a flower? But other than that, people don't care. And so because they're taking care of their own plant and looking at that plant, and then of course they're always completely surprised. I've had a few students who their plants have bloomed, and that's been very exciting for them. now when they're going outside, they are taking pictures. They tag me on Instagram. One of the assignments that I give is I'll literally say, go find something that's blooming outside and take a picture of it and post it, and to an assignment. And so, and sometimes I say, if you know what the plant is, that's great. If you don't, then you can try and stump me. And so now, I can tell that they're looking at things because they are taking pictures while they're out on a walk, right? They're walking their dog and they're like, oh, there's a plant. I wonder what that is. Let me take a picture of it for class and see if Carlson can identify it. Or, and so I can see that their own sort of engagement with the environment around them changes because they have their own plant that they're taking care of. But also I'm telling them, like, it doesn't have to be science in that, like, test tube, Bunsen burner chemical aspect, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The sort of fabricated look at science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes when we think about experimentation at home, it often invokes chemicals or maybe some hazardous kinds of scenarios that we may only want to control within the science laboratory. But with plants, that sounds like this is a little bit more inviting to say, yeah, we can do these at home pretty easily.
And there's a lot that we don't know really about plants. Like that's the other piece is I always try and tell students, so we had a lot of fires in the fall, right when school was getting ready to start. Mm-hmm. And so one of my students was like, I really want to do, and this, of course, as a science teacher, you will understand my panic when he said this is what he wanted to do. He said, I want to test the effects of smoke on a plant. I said, so you're going to light a fire and then like, what are you going to do? And then,
I was actually going the other route thinking, we can't condone cigarettes to make this happen either. And
well, so we spent some time talking about it. And then finally I said, well, you know what you could do? You could have two plants and you could expose one in a controlled way of smoke. You could, put a fish bowl over the top of it or a big Tupperware container and use a candle, blow the candle out, put the container over the top of it. And so that's what he did. And
really?
I would have never, at first when he said he wanted to, do fire and smoke, I was like, yeah, no, at home, your parents are not going to be down with that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then it ended up being, a really interesting experiment for him. And it also made me think a little bit more about like, well, what are some things I could have my kids do at home? So we're going to do an independent experiment second semester in my botany class. And I think that they've learned a lot more and will be maybe a little bit more adventurous second semester about what they want to do. And I have the feeling that I still have like 150 plants in the greenhouse right now. I think I'm going to have a call to have a lot more kids do a lot more experimentation on those plants in the spring.
It also seems to me that this, like you mentioned, like now you can take it further where this may have been like a starter experiment in the greenhouse, but now you can do that. You can front load that at home and take it further in school now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Even almost like a flipped classroom kind of thing.
Yeah. But the plants have to stay right side up, friends. Or do they?
Oh, flipped. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Flip greenhouse, kids. All right. So, India, I think I know the answer to this, and we chatted about this a little bit earlier. And I know you're biased. You're the botany teacher. You have horticulture classes. Do the general sciences ignore plants too much?
Well, I think they miss an opportunity. And when ignoring it, they miss an opportunity in that plants are easy to work with. They're really accessible, and kids get excited about. You can see when your plant is growing well and doing well, and you can incorporate physics and chemistry and biology all into working with plants. I taught introductory physics and chemistry for 10 years, as well as taught plant science. And you can do all of those things in it. So I kind of feel like we forget, right, that without plants, there is no life on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I felt very like I felt self-reflective as well, thinking about the times that I was teaching biology, and I do wish I had done more. And every year that I did the biology class, I always thought I need to do more with plants. I need to do more with plants, and I did a little bit more, but every year I felt I still need to do more. And some of that, of course, the textbooks that we were using back then, plants were always the later chapters, and they were always, they always kind of tucked away in the back. They're a little bit more integrated now, but nonetheless, it was still, it felt like a chapter to get to, or a few chapters to get to. I'm hoping that there are listeners out there that are thinking, I can do this. This is something that, pandemic or not, I can do this. What advice do you have for them to start this on their own?
Buy a cheap plant and some pots and clone some. There's like so many YouTube resources out there for how to clone plants, and it doesn't take very much to do that. Even just buying seeds and soil and having kids learn about, how does something sprout and grow, I think is a great way to engage students of any age. I mean, I feel like they teach elementary school kids, like you get to like grow a pea from a seed when you're in, second or third grade, maybe. And then you don't, I mean, unless you get the chance to take a plant class in high school, you don't ever get to do anything like that ever again. And it's easy and it's fascinating. And there's a lot that we don't know.
You mentioned engagement, and that's on everybody's mind, especially when we're doing virtual learning and with the pandemic kind of closing people off. Have you seen signs of this project kind of creating a community around their plants at home and kind of connecting people beyond what you thought?
Well, given that yesterday my librarian complained that I got mobbed at curbside pickup and that they were...
I got good books too.
Basically, that was kind of what she said. She was kind of mad at. She wasn't mad at me, but she was like, "What was going on over there? We needed like crowd control at your table." And I know it was because I had said to kids, "I'm going to be at school. I'm going to be doing terrariums," and then I don't know. It just. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely, and like there were these, my favorite is I have these two guys who are my 6th period class, and they're practicing for baseball, and they stopped by, and I had some really tiny containers for making terrarias. I mean, we're talking like falcon tube size, and that were glass. And I said, so you can do a big jar, or you can do a tiny one. They're like, oh, we want to do tiny ones. So here's, 6'2", strapping baseball player. Like I'm gonna make the tiniest terrarium ever. And then today in class, he actually, turned on his camera and said, "Hey, how much do I need to water this?" Right. So I can see that kids are like, will meet each other to come to school to come pick up plants.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Right. So I definitely
plant rendezvous.
Yeah. So I see that there's like an interesting, and it's taken a little while for that to happen. But since I've been coming and doing it every 2 weeks at school, every time we have a pickup, I'm there and I'm there with plants. It's definitely shifted. And I actually have decided that for second semester, I'm just going to open up a class after school during asynchronous time meeting where plant kids can come and meet and talk about their plants online with each other. So that's kind of one of my goals for second semester.
This is Fred 2.0. He is.
Yep.
Have you heard from parents or other family members about the project?
I have heard from some parents this year just about how much they've enjoyed me really trying to, connect with kids in a different way and give them something, something extra to do. And then I see a lot of parents, like I saw parents yesterday,
Sure.
And some of them are parents that like, I don't have their kids are freshmen.
Oh, sure.
And when they walk up, they're like, "Oh, I can have a plant." And I'm like, "Yeah, you can have a plant. Just take it home, and this is what you need to do to take care of it." And parents are always kind of shocked. So that's pretty.
So it
cool.
sounds like the project is making life a little bit more enjoyable for you during this, this time.
Oh, I'm an extrovert. I live for plant pickup.
I live for plant pickup.
Plant pickup.
That's awesome.
I do.
Well, thank you so much for your time, India. It's fascinating to hear about your project here and on the success you're having. I do hope that it inspires some other upstart plant pickup scenarios out there. And we wish you the best in expanding to your second semester and seeing what happens with your hydroponic stuff.
I know I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do with that. It should be really fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Lab Out Loud. If you'd like to learn more about some of the things discussed in this episode or previous episodes, you can find show notes at our website, laboutloud.com. If you have a guest idea or a future topic that you'd like to see on Lab Out Loud, go to our contact page and send us a message. Also, you can subscribe to Lab Out Loud on your favorite podcasting app, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to find podcasts. While you're there, leave us a review and rating. Your input helps others find our show. Thanks again for listening.